In my last couple of videos, I talked a little bit about the charging of my Tesla and how it works and the fact that there's different levels of charging and we can go different places to charge. But I wanted to take a step backwards and talk a little bit more about how to charge the car and how that works. And, sort of thinking about the big picture here. So you always have to consider, we've done the math before to look at how the voltage, the amperage, and the kilowatt hour are related to each other, so you can see how much energy you're putting in your car based on the voltage and the amperage. So if you think about an electrical circuit, you've got some amount of electricity that comes through in a voltage. So typical household voltage is about 110 volts, 120. And typically your outlets in the house have a 15 amp circuit on them. That means that they have a limited amount of energy they can provide. And that's providing about 1.5 kilowatts of power to your car. That's about the same amount that, say, a TV takes in the house. The air conditioner and your other high capacity devices, your hot water heater, they run on 240 volts and a higher amperage for the same reason the car does, because they draw more power. So you have to kind of think about that. Typically in your house, most of your devices are very low wattage that they use, so you can use 110 volts to make them work. As you get more, if you need more energy, you have to go to 240 volts. There's a point of diminishing returns on actually creating, using energy from 110 volts. You could create more amperage through it, but you're going to lose more through the circuit itself, and it's going to get very hot. So you want to try and avoid doing that and go to 240 volts. So in your 110 volt outlets, that's what's called level 1. And if you set up as a level 1 charge in your house, you're going to plug into a 110 volt outlet. That's the typical 3-pronged outlet. You plug it in, you get charged, you can charge your car with it. It is possible to do that, but it will take many, many hours. It'll take 10, 12 hours to charge your car completely when it's discharged. So you really have to consider that carefully. It's sort of a last resort kind of thing. The second level is the level 2, and that's where you go to these public stations where they have 240 volt outlets that you can plug into. Now, the most common type is the J1772 type. That's the type we've talked about before, where you go into some of these destination places. Even the place I parked when I was up at up in Orlando, that was a level 2 type charger. The Whole Foods that I went to, some of the other places around, they have a charging capacity that allows you to do that. They allow for more energy to come in the car, but it takes about 4 hours to do the charging that way. So that's why they're level 2 type chargers. And so you really only, your options are a little bit limited in that sense. The J1772 is the most common type. There are a few others that are out there, but that's the most common type. And, you can get some pretty good amount of energy. It takes maybe about 4 hours as opposed to 10 hours to charge your car, all the way from empty to full, essentially, from discharged battery to fully charged battery. So you get some ability to make it work and actually start the charging the way. And that's terrific. That's really good. And that's level 2 charging, and it allows you a lot of flexibility in it. The problem is that it can take many hours to do the charging. And the level 3 charging is a better way to charge your car overall. The level 3 charging allows you a lot more flexibility in charging, much faster, much higher capacity. It goes beyond the 240 volts. It goes beyond the typically 32 to 50 amps. So you can get a lot more power into your car a lot more quickly. And so there are a couple of different kinds of level 3 type charging. And the major ones are the Tesla charger. Those are the supercharger networks that Tesla has set up. And you have that ability to use those if you own a Tesla. But Tesla only allows Teslas to charge at those. So there was actually a situation that happened in New York City. Tesla has built their network of these different superchargers, and they wanted to put some superchargers in New York City, in Manhattan in particular, and be able to allow for Teslas to charge at various supercharger stations around the city. And they were looking for a tax break from the city. And the city said, well, no, we'll only give you that if you allow for your superchargers to be used with any car. Tesla came up with this proprietary system. They've invested in their network. Tesla was not going to give in to that, so Tesla said no. It's still hung up in a lot of legal battles, and there's a lot of back and forth. If I were going to guess, I would guess that Tesla will finally sort of relent, and New York will sort of relent, and they will come up with a plan to create a supercharger network. So maybe it'd be 4 supercharger stations and 1 other type of station that might be a J1772. So it's going to be a lower capacity, but it will allow you to charge. That'd be my guess. But I don't know that for sure. We'll see what actually comes out of that. But Tesla has invested a lot in their infrastructure, and that's really what makes Tesla interesting in the sense of being able to drive longer distances. So that's the one type. The other type is this one that's called the CHAdeMO, or I've heard it pronounced a couple of different ways, but it's capital CHA, little DE, and then capital MO. And the reason they call it that is it's a charge de move, and it's kind of a funny thing that they came up with. But in 2010, a conglomerate of Japanese automakers came up with a plan to come up with a worldwide standard for charging ports. And they wanted to be able to allow for people to charge their cars anywhere in the world the same way. So they came up with this standard called the CHAdeMO. And in doing that, they came up with a proprietary type connector, but it was universal. So it was something that was new and unique, but it was universal, anybody could use it. They came up with this idea of move using charge, or move by charge, and it actually comes from a Japanese phrase, and I hope I don't butcher this too bad, but ocha demo ikaga desuka. But the idea is that phrase roughly translates to, how about a cup of tea? So it should be the amount of time it would take to charge would be equivalent to how long it takes you to make a cup of tea. That was the idea. So they came up with this standard, and they created it. But it's not the Tesla standard. So it's a different standard that they created, and it actually charges a little bit differently. So some of the stations out there, like the EVgo stations, for example, the EVgo stations have a couple of different types of chargers there. They have the CHAdeMO as one of the types of chargers. They have the universal charger, which is pretty much was the standard in Europe for a period of time, though it's being phased out and you don't see them as much in the US or in Europe anymore. And they also have the level 2 J1772 type chargers, so that you can plug in a car there too. Now they charge you, the way they work it, and like EVgo, is they charge you a rate sort of like the supercharger charges you. Did that make sense? Supercharger charges you? So they set it up the same way. So when you go there and you actually want to charge at a high capacity charge, you use the CHAdeMO, and you're actually able to charge at a rate that's equivalent to, like 25, 30 cents a kilowatt hour or so. So they're charging you a rate. And the same thing with the universal adapter. If you want to do the level 2 charging with the J1772, it's free. That's just the way they set it up. So that way they have some ability to allow people to charge and do some different things. Now the Tesla can't use the universal charger. There's no adapter for that. But they do sell an adapter for the CHAdeMO. So you can actually plug the CHAdeMO in, much like the adapter we have for the J1772, and then plug it into the Tesla. So it's not proprietary that way, and you can actually do it. But the question is, why would you? When Tesla already has a really good supercharger network out there, why would you want to have the CHAdeMO thing? I think it's great that they offer it, but I'm not going to buy one because I have the supercharger network available to me, or I can go to the J1772 stations and charge at level 2. So that's the way it works. That's sort of the method they have to all these different charging things that they've got available. So you have to kind of consider all of those things when you look at them. You go, okay, where do I want to charge? How much do I want to charge? How fast do I want to charge? If I'm not driving a Tesla, I'm going to go to one of the stations that has a CHAdeMO because they're going to have faster charging, and it's going to allow me to charge up more quickly, much like the supercharger. So there are places that have them, but they're not run by the car companies themselves. They're run by independent dealers. I've heard that several of the gas companies, like I think Mobil, Wawa, and a couple of others, have talked about putting in charging stations that would allow the CHAdeMO to be in there in addition to the J1772, so they can get business from electric car users. And I think that's great because they already have the infrastructure and the location and the physical property, so why not offer that as an alternative? Now, as far as what it costs to charge up at any other stations, at any stations. At home, obviously, your cost will vary based on a price per kilowatt hour that's set by your electric company. Your electric company will charge you per kilowatt hour. The kilowatt hour you can always back into in a way by the how much amperage and how much voltage you're using. So you can figure out what the kilowatt hour, how many kilowatt hours it's going to take to charge your car. In my case, in my city, they're charging us 11 cents a kilowatt hour, which is a great rate. We're using mostly solar in this state, so well, I wouldn't say mostly, but it's a large amount of solar. So the rate is pretty low. They have a lot of advertisements that they're one of the lowest in the country. Great. So 11 cents a kilowatt hour is totally worthwhile. So essentially, on my 60 kilowatt hour battery, it takes $6.60 to charge it from all the way from discharge to full. That's just, if you do the math, it's pretty simple that way. So that's the way that works. And so at home, it's based on your actual, the amount that they charge you by your power company. On the road, it can range anywhere from $0. There's a lot of places that offer some amount of free charging. Sometimes it's limited by how long you can charge. Sometimes it's just limited by the fact that you only have a tolerance for staying there for a short amount of time. Sometimes it's sometimes there's other factors that limit it. Sometimes you have to log in through the app, and the app will tell you only have so much time and so forth. But that's the way that works. Then the cost can go anywhere, whatever they want to set it at. So it can be a cost per kilowatt hour that they want to charge you. So let's say like at the superchargers, they're charging you essentially, not everywhere, but 25 cents a kilowatt hour. So you're paying that for kilowatt hour to charge at the higher capacity. Some of these more places that are in parking lots that are in popular destinations, sometimes they will charge you more. It'll be some amount per kilowatt hour, let's say 40 cents a kilowatt hour or something. Some places will have a minimum price that you pay. So no matter how long you charge for, you're going to pay at least $1.50. So if you're paying 38 cents a kilowatt hour, they want to make sure that you're going to stay there for long enough to make it worthwhile, so that the space is available for someone else. So they'll charge that amount. Some places will charge you by the hour, and they'll say they charge $1 an hour. And it's kind of like parking, right? You park there, you pay the $1 an hour to charge, and however much charge you get out of it is what you get out of it. Now, that can get very expensive, because if you think about, if I'm spending 25 cents a kilowatt hour to go to a supercharger, and that would roughly be double what I'm paying at home, so it would cost me $12. If I'm paying $1 an hour, and I'm only getting half of that, or essentially what I'm getting at home, right? Then it's going to cost me, 10 times as much. So it's really expensive in that case, but it may be worth it for a short period of time. So it's worthwhile spending the time to figure out what they're charging you, what their policy is, and how much they're going to charge you. And as I said, there's plenty of places around that offer it for free. So you can always be topped off in doing your charging. Like the hotel I stayed at, where they had the destination charge, and you could just pull up and park there at night as long as it was available. You could just plug in and stay. I had a friend that went to he was out and he was running low on charge, and he wasn't sure what to do, and he saw a hotel that had a destination charger, so he just pulled in and parked there for an hour and watched TV on his screen, and actually was able to charge there for a little bit. Typically the hotels request that you're a guest there. I don't think in this case he went in and asked, since he was there for a short time and it was kind of late at night, no one was parked there anyway. But typically, you have to be a guest at the hotel to charge there, but sometimes they'll just let you do it. So anyway, just some food for thought on how charging works, and how these different types of adapters are, and how they all kind of come together. So Tesla has something proprietary. The Japanese consortium came up with something that's readily available here in the US. And then you have your J1772 level 2 chargers that are much slower. So does that help? Does it help you understand how the whole charging system works? Does it make a little more sense? You have to kind of decide how and when and where you want to charge. It's a little different than getting gas, though I think it's changing with all of these gas companies deciding to put in electric charging stations. I think it will start to change, because if they start doing some of the faster charging, then you have the ability to create a network for cars that'll be easy to get to. I mean, when I charge at work offers me free charging, which is terrific. I have no complaints about that. And what I'll do is I'll plug in for about 4 hours. I'll come in the morning, plug in, and charge. We have a little network of people that we all know each other in the charging community there. And we have a little WhatsApp group that we use, and we talk to each other. So it's kind of nice. I'll say, I'm charging in the morning and I'm finished. I'll go, hey, I'm pulling out of the space. If anybody needs to charge, it's all yours. So for the second 4 hours, someone else might charge, or something else. Once in a while we get iced, and ice means that an internal combustion engine car parked in a charging spot. And, we'll complain to management about that and let them take care of it. But that's, that's one of those things that's kind of an ongoing battle, sort of, that sometimes people just see a space there and they go, oh, there's a space, let me take it. And they don't think about the fact that it's a charging space. It's okay. It's a nice feature they're offering us at work, but it's not something they have to offer us. So we have to kind of play it smart and, kind of think it through a little bit. Anyway, so that's my take. I hope that helps you to understand a little bit more about charging and how charging works, and how efficient you can be, and the things you can do, and how you have to kind of think about your trip a little bit. Like I said, planning a trip is a little different in an electric car than it is in a traditionally gas engine car, because you have to think about where to stop. But I think that's changing, and I think over time it's going to get even better, and it's going to get even easier to decide when and how to charge.